All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Millennials Are Old podcast. And you know what, Brian?
I don't know, Taylor. I'm upset with you this week.
I don't blame you, man, because you know what? I got some more correspondence from our least favorite motherfucker, the Nostalgia Critic. He tried locking me in my apartment and he made us watch The Reconciler, which actually, to be fair, actually ended up pretty good for us.
And
But he
he
also,
tried to reconcile us, and he actually drove a further wedge between us. Our friendship
yeah,
is damaged now because of Doug Walker and the reconciler.
I mean, do you remember when he tried fucking undermining our show by colluding behind our backs?
He tried to butter me up. I remember, and I
Exactly.
almost went for it. I
Yeah, he
almost
tried.
jumped at it like an eel or a seal for a fish.
No, fucking exactly. And you know what? After all the bullshit that he's done, he now finally is trying to come back and be like, hey, Taylor, we love you. I'm going to put you on the Channel Awesome thing. And it's like, I don't want to be part of Channel
Uh,
Awesome. All right. Can you imagine us being on Channel Awesome? Jesus Christ. We would be the coolest motherfuckers on there.
Sorry, Doug's been talking to you?
Yeah, he has. He's
I
really
have
been
to ask
grooming
him
me.
about that because I thought, I don't know, it's just, sometimes he talks to me and I thought maybe it was because he liked me or something.
He's been telling me a lot of things. Like he wants us to be special friends and not to tell my mom about it and stuff like that. And I'm just like, what the fuck? I am a 31-year-old man, Doug. Like, don't groom me like all your contributors groom me. Never mind. We won't get into that right now. But after all the shit he's been trying to do to us for so long, I thought, why don't we just tear down this motherfucker? So you know what? Let's tear down him like he tried tearing down the wall. So this week we're going to review his review of the
Oh,
wall. And boy, let's get into this shit. But before we get into this shit, let's bring back our segment, Cringe Generational Cringe Millennial Moment of the
weak,
Week.
weak, 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 weak.
Woo! Yeah! All right. And,
Cringe.
I mean, this whole thing is cringe. So, for people who don't know, the Nostalgia Critic is a suburban Chicago-based content creator who makes possibly some of the cringiest popular content on the internet. And I mean that genuinely with no sense of irony.
Absolutely. And one of the most influential figures in content creation, bar none. But yeah, the fucking cringiest, most up his ass guy online.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. And before we get into his magnum shit opus, let's get into a infamous one. So our cringe generational millennial segment here is the short video, Melvin, Brother of the Joker. Now, this is a video that even the Nostalgia Critic thinks is awful. And the bar for awful Nostalgia Critic content is so low that, like, this is the thing he considers, like, he's embarrassed of is wild to me.
So
Did you watch it?
I watched it for the first time while I was on my way home to record this episode. I think I had tangentially heard about it, just in online spaces and maybe even seen like that thumbnail, that title card, but I had never watched it before just a few minutes ago. And it was so annoying. It was truly annoying. For as influential as Doug Walker is, I don't have a whole lot of personal history with him. I hated him when he was like kind of rising up, and I was big on when I was really on the internet and forums and shit. And then I kind of got over hating him, and I was like, all right, he reviews some movies sometimes. And then all the shit about him and Channel Awesome came out, and I was like, I was right to hate him. He sucked. He's a hack.
And then you saw Melvin and Brother of the Joker in the Wall review, and you're like, I am the most correct person in the world to think he sucks.
Yeah. Well, like, so the Melvin thing, like, I don't even know what to say about it. The bit is exactly what you'd imagine. It's the Joker, kind of the Heath Ledger Joker, I guess his fail son, little brother, who still lives with his mom. And that's the whole thing.
And then his mom's like annoying. And
Yeah,
that's
and
it.
his mom is annoying while he's trying to make his vlog. So, first of all, it's not funny. Obviously, that should go without saying. But I had the nerdiest, obtrusive thought watching this, Taylor.
Oh God, let's hear it.
Okay, so I understand that this is a bad skit. Doug's not funny. The bit's not funny. It's a hack bit. It's stupid. There's also a bunch of random monkey cheese millennial bullshit. But the thing that bothers me more than anything is presumably this is the brother of the Heath Ledger Joker based on the way that Doug dresses, the way his hair and his makeup is in this video, and kind of the way he talks. But he's not really connecting it to that version of the Joker at all. He's kind of trying to do a bad, vague Heath Ledger Joker impression, and this is on me, that this is a nerdy thought to have. The way that this character is acting would be more like the brother of like the Cesar Romero Joker. It kind of just seems like Doug wanted to dress up like the Heath Ledger Joker because he thought it looked cool. And he loosely stringed together kind of a bit that would excuse him doing that.
Well, and that's the thing though, Brian. I mean, I showed you the fucking high school yearbook photo of Doug, right? Where he's wearing the fucking fedora.
I didn't realize that was real. I had to fact check. I had to double check that. I thought that was joke.
he is a proto-cringe millennial. It's amazing. Like, the whole fedora thing didn't really become cringe until like the mid to late 2000s, but he did that in like 1999. That's actually kind of impressive.
Fedoras, newsboy caps, it's more than that, right? It's the snarkiness, the smugness, the lack of self-awareness, the overly earnest talking about feelings and, your heart and creativity, whatever negative stereotype like Zoomers have about millennials, that's Doug Walker. And he's not a millennial, but boy, if he didn't ever, he clearly rose up in the millennial era.
Oh no, Doug is a millennial. He was born in
1981. Oh, cool. I assumed he was a Gen Xer. I thought he was just barely on the cutoff. Awesome. Even better. That makes me so happy. Because really, whatever shitty thing you think about millennials, you look at this guy and you go, oh my God, this was the most popular YouTuber or one of the most popular YouTubers for that generation. It exemplifies what online content was for them.
No, 100%. So yeah, we've really, I think, dug the well of the Melvin brother of the Joker thing, but I did want to highlight it because it is a particularly cringe,
it's so
even
bad.
for a Nostalgia Critic thing. It is awful, but let's get into the absolute worst thing Doug has ever made. And I think we can say that just unequivocally the worst thing he's ever made, which is his The Wall review, the Pink Floyd's The Wall review. And just get into some details before we get into our fucking hour of hate here. So this review was released in 2019. It was made by the Nostalgia Critic and by his fail crew, and as well guest starring Corey Taylor of Slipknot and his son. That's not a joke. Corey Taylor from Slipknot is in a Nostalgia Critic review.
He must be a fan of Doug.
So,
or his son is, maybe?
Yeah, from what I heard, it was his son who was a fan, and Corey basically did it as like a bonding experience with his son, I guess, which I guess that's
cute. Sure.
I mean, that's the best thing to come out of this review.
Knowing that that's Corey's real son is the most endearing thing about this. I'm learning this now for the first time. I'm like, well, that's nice.
I mean, to be fair, looking at him, it's like, oh yeah, that's Corey Taylor's son.
Yeah, of course. I even thought that watching that. I was like, wow, they really found a kid that looks just like Corey. No shit.
Then it was released on the Channel Awesome YouTube channel. Now, Channel Awesome used to be a big channel back in the day, but then everybody in upper management sexually harassed and just regular harassed everybody, and everybody except for Doug and the Cinema Snob left. So by the time this happened, the entire fucking Channel Awesome crew left.
Cinema Snob, one of the only men in the world more unlikable than Doug Walker, I gotta say.
Oh man, he's kind of become a lolcow in himself, actually. It's kind of
no
wild.
Shit. That doesn't surprise me.
Oh yeah, no, there is some fucking drama. There is some drama with Brad that I first heard about at some point, and I'm like, wow, man, your life sucks. I am not paying attention to this. And this was even after the Channel Awesome thing. Like, he basically destroyed his life because of this shit.
I don't even know about any of this yet, but I will be learning about it tonight, I can guarantee you.
Oh, and then the worst part is he had a kid recently on top of it, too.
No, oh, that poor fucking kid. So my impression of the Cinema Snob, both the character and the actual guy that portrays him, is like everything that's annoying about Doug Walker, plus just a meaner guy. Because Doug's whole outward thing is that he seems kind of friendly and affable, even when he's being a snarky critic. Brad is just that, but like an angry version of that. It's so off-putting.
It really fucking is. I mean, and going into my history of Channel Awesome, I used to be a big fan of individual creators on Channel Awesome. Nostalgia Critic was not my favorite, I'll be honest with you, but he was one whose reviews I watched for years and years and years. And then I think I started having sex, and then I stopped watching the Nostalgia Critic. I think that was probably around the time I stopped watching him consistently. But
makes sense.
I kept abreast of him here and there. I learned about the movies. I only watched Kick-Assia, and Kick-Assia is also a peak cringe millennial moment, because holy shit. And
we will never watch one of those movies for the podcast. I won't do it.
No, 100%. I will say, though, hilarious enough, Kick-Assia, which is genuinely terrible, is the best of those movies, which is wild because that movie's unwatchable. It's so fucking terrible.
And they all really long. They're all 3 hours long, right?
Kick-Assia is about 90 minutes, but To Boldly Flee is 3.5 hours long.
Why? You were the sarcastic YouTube critic. How is your lore movie 4 hours long?
Well, speaking of people who are complaining about things being way too long, so this review is also 39 minutes and 49 seconds long, although there's ads and all these things in here, but that's the total length of the video. And on Amazon, for the ratings, I couldn't find actual ratings for the YouTube video because it's a fucking YouTube video, but it has 100,000 dislikes out of 25,000 likes. And I'm like, who are the 25,000 people that liked it? I don't know who the fuck those people are.
This is a thing that I've always thought about Doug Walker. So he has a core audience that will like anything he does because he's that popular. So my history with Doug is almost the exact opposite of yours, Taylor. So I hated Doug Walker before I watched anything. I actually might have even hated him kind of unfairly because I was like, this is a shouty, screamy film critic guy. I hate this. Even though I like Dave EGN, but I was like, just out of pocket, I was like, I don't like Doug Walker. I can tell this sucks because I was like on my own little forums and watching my own online guys. And you know how when you're a kid, you're very tribalistic about your online content, right? And then maybe in my mid-20s, I was bored and I kept getting recommended his videos on YouTube. And I was like, okay, I'll watch a few of these old videos. And I was like, okay, they're fine. They're fine. You know, he's still pretty annoying, but, you know, whatever. And immediately, right, you know, a couple years after, I started to go like, maybe he's not so bad. Seems like a nice guy. He's just kind of a dork. All the bullshit came out. But my gut reaction to Doug Walker, my gut feeling was always, I hate this. His whole bit is that he yells and he's overbearing. And I remember always thinking, even back in the day, that like he finds things to criticize that aren't there. Like he makes up reasons to criticize a film because that's his bit. And I think that if you're presenting yourself as a film critic, that's a really stupid way to do it. Like, and he does it almost like the cinema sins thing, right? He's like, I'm going to cherry pick a reason that I can make a joke out of this, not necessarily to make an astute criticism of this movie, but because I need to have a joke here for content. Like, it sucks.
No, that's the thing is that like Doug genuinely doesn't understand humor and film criticism unless it's like literally like a reference. Like that's the only thing that he understands. Like there's this apocryphal story that somebody on Channel Awesome, I don't remember which one, I think it might have been like Obscurus Lupa or like Phalus or something like that, was like doing a bit for a video they were collabing on. And they're like, oh, what's that from? And it's like, oh, it's just like a joke. Like me and my friends have like an inside joke. And he's like, wait, what? And he like legitimately didn't understand that like humor could come from something other than a media reference.
That's all. You and friend tell joke.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, we'll definitely get into that once we get into our little synopsis of the actual review here. But I have one more thing before we get into that. So on Amazon, it has a 3 out of 5 stars. All the 5-star reviews are shit posts, obviously. And all the 1-star reviews are things we're going to talk about. So we're not actually going to go over any of the Amazon reviews. But the one I really want to highlight here, and this is so funny, on Rate Your Music, the album has a 0.65 out of 5. And to this day, Brian, it is the lowest rated thing on the entire website of Rate Your Music.
That's wild.
It is ranked lower than all of Onision's releases.
Wait, that is how much put out music?
Yes, he has full-length albums.
No. No.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Sorry, that's shocking to me. That's amazing.
And also, when this was released, Fantano also said it was the worst thing he ever heard. So people hate this vehemently, and we are part of that group, by the way.
What's cool about this, too, is we have different kind of histories with this source material, too, and we both hate it for largely the same reasons, because that is how kind of, I hate to say something's objectively bad. This is a bad, not funny, it's not insightful. It's a very bad piece of media criticism, though, almost objectively. It doesn't give you any insights into what the piece it's critiquing is. It says nothing about it. It doesn't really attempt to say much about it.
You know, actually, I think it's more revelatory of Doug than The Wall.
Absolutely. This is about him.
So I'm going to say this real quick because nobody's ever mentioned this. Do you think that this is a purposeful meta commentary about how Doug sucks? No,
I don't.
I wish it was.
I'm not even gonna entertain this because you know it's not. You know it's not. So I was worried watching this. So I sometimes will watch a new Doug Walker video, and it's always annoying, especially like the recent ones. He's doing these long skits. He's talking about the actual film even less. He has all these preachy morals, and But sometimes I'll put it on, and be like, let's see what he says about Elf, and then it's some 40-minute video where half of it is him talking about the spirit of Christmas or whatever, and how commercialism is actually good, whatever the fuck Doug Walker talks about, right? But I never watched this. When this came out, I saw it and went, do I need to see Doug Walker talk about The Wall? No. And the reason for that is because I am precious about The Wall. I am like the kid that this review that Doug is making fun of it is. Saw The Wall, the actual film, not the review, when I was about 12 or about to turn 12, and it literally changed my life. It made me suddenly get into music, and I became obsessed with Pink Floyd and obsessed with rock music. The specter of it's kind of loomed over whatever I'm going through. I'm still into story songs. I'm still into operas, still into conceptual art and multimedia pieces. It really has informed a lot of my taste, and even on an emotional level, even though it's, and Doug says this, it's adolescent, it's very angsty and dramatic. A lot of that's informed a lot of what I still like. So I made a point to not watch this. And watching it last night, I was worried that I was being too hard on Doug because I'm such a nerd for the source material. But the further I get into it, I don't think so.
No, you're not. And in fact, actually, talk about personal history. So hilariously enough, we have both deep personal histories about things about this review. So for you, it's The Wall, and for me, it's Doug and the Nostalgia Critic. Like, I had a pretty deep personal connection with Channel Awesome and Doug. And I think this is awful because obviously this is fucking cringe and terrible. And it's poorly aged. And it just reminds me of all the stupid ass things I liked growing up. And you hate it because it's obviously a terrible piece of media analysis, on top of the fact that it's a shitty criticism of something that was very fundamental to your life growing up.
And we're about to really tear Doug Walker and Channel Awesome writ large apart pretty bad, as many people have done before and as many people will do after. But I want to make clear, since this is the Elderly Millennial podcast, he kind of helped create the landscape of modern YouTube. I mean, it's him and Angry Video Game Nerd, and I'd say AVGN more so, just because he was first and he did it better. Any video essays you watch, all those people were inspired to do that from Doug Walker and AVGN. Any bread tuber you like, anyone that's doing a thing where they talk to a camera and they critique a situation or a piece of media, I mean, they're doing that because of Doug. Probably 90% of them, if not more so.
Well, even then, one of the biggest bread tubers was literally the female sidekick of Doug at one point with Lindsay Ellis.
She's based. I mean, she's kind of annoying sometimes, but she says some base stuff. Yeah, I'm all right with Lindsay.
And like basically almost any major content creator you can think of that critiques media was either because of Doug or was literally an employee of Doug at one point. Like,
or literally worked for him.
So it's genuinely crazy that like he is such a fossil, whereas everybody else has moved on, but Doug is such a fucking fossil. It's kind of wild to me.
That gets back to what you were saying about trying to imagine the people who liked this, who gave it a positive rating or gave it a like on YouTube or whatever. He is so popular. I mean, at this point, Doug has crossed over. He's like on the normie end of YouTube, right? So
even that, he was on an Adult Swim show recently.
Yeah.
I showed you that. And then also he was parodied on SpongeBob. That's not a joke.
So no. So he's crossed over. So there is a contingent of his audience that just like him and they like whatever he does. They aren't sitting there and thinking, and I'm trying not to sound like an asshole. They are basically like NPCs, right? They sit and they go, there's a certain number of people who are like, oh, that's Doug Walker. I like Doug Walker. I like his wall review. And they do that with everything he puts out, I'm sure.
No, you're 100% correct. Absolutely. And to be fair, that's a lot of content creators. They just have sycophantic fans who will follow it.
That's not his fault.
The fact that DSP still has fans like that proves that could be for anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I can tell you, I can see the allure of being a DSP fan because Bill is so accessible, right? You could conceivably get him to hang out with you and get him to come drive to hang out. Not that you'd want to, but Doug isn't paying attention to his fans. Like his DSP, it does seem like he talks to fans and chat and shit. I don't know why the fuck you'd want to talk to him, but he does. Whereas Doug isn't talking to any fucking one of his subscribers.
Oh, no, he is. He does live streams and stuff where he talks to the audience. I don't know if that's curated or not, but he does do live streams.
Okay, no, okay. Putting my foot in my mouth on that one. Again, I don't know why you want to talk to Doug so bad.
Well, to be fair, I live fairly close to him, so I could, drive by his house and be like, hey, Doug, we need to talk.
What you got to do, Taylor, is you got to contrive some sort of plot so that you can have him and the Red Letter Media guys meet under false pretenses. Make them think to set him up on a blind date, and when they get there, they're meeting each other.
I'm going to tell them to meet up where fucking the Blues Brothers had like that one crash scene and on the fucking Milwaukee Bridge on the Milwaukee Highway. And he'll do that and be like, hey, guys. Well, to be fair, actually, Red Letter Media got their start on fucking Channel Awesome, too.
I probably did know that at some point because so many people were on Channel Awesome. At one point, right, there was like, I've heard that YouTube content creators, they were like begging to be in Channel Awesome, right? They were like jumping through all these hoops to try to, because they thought it was going to like break them through. And some of them it did, I guess,
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it definitely worked out for a lot of them, but a lot of them it also fucked over pretty immensely.
Yeah. Well, and I'm of the opinion, and I'm not trying to say that it's all like be a free market, cream rises to the top type person, but the really good people like Lindsay Ellis, Todd in the Shadows, people who had a really distinct voice, and Red Letter Media, those are all people who, first of all, even though she called herself the Nostalgia Chick, like the really successful people probably would have been pretty successful without Channel Awesome. Maybe not as quickly, but they would have been. And none of them were doing Doug's bit.
No, not really.
There's a ton of Nostalgia Critic knockoff. To this day, there's still guys trying to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to me. So, but before we get into that, though, because we're definitely going to talk about that in the post review here, but let's finally get into the synopsis here. Now, we're not going to go painstakingly into everything, but there's certainly sections that we're probably going to talk for like a half an hour on because there is so much to talk about with Doug's shitty analysis. So, the review is essentially a half-ass recreation, but also a half recreation of The Wall, the movie, with Doug singing and Rob Scallon doing instrumentation over it with terrible parody lyrics. It's awful. This is just terrible.
Awful. I want to say Scallon did great. I mean, he was given a pretty difficult assignment, I feel, because
absolutely. Rob Scallon did a great fucking job here.
Yeah, I mean, he had to replicate the songs in such a way that they weren't stealing the source material, and it probably didn't have there aren't arrangements for Waiting for the Worms or The Trial. You know what I mean? I don't think so. He had to figure out how to do that. Did great work. It's just a shame that it was, clearly has skills with arrangement and with, I don't want to say composition because they're covers, but he's gifted, and it was in service of this.
Well, and that's the thing. So Rob Scallon is essentially, it's a whole family affair, essentially, at Nostalgia Critic Central, Channel Awesome Central, because Rob Scallon has actually been married to Tamara Chambers forever. She's one of the female characters who's a frequent collaborator with Doug. She's actually in the review. So it's basically like a whole incestuous family affair here. So they're like, oh, we got Rob Scallon to do this. And it's like, yeah, you did a favor for your wife.
All of the featured players at Channel Awesome, as far as I can tell, that are left, because again, it used to be an actual channel, lots of people there. Now it's Doug's friends and family.
It's Doug, Brad, Tamara, and Malcolm. That's really about it. And whatever random other bit actors he can find in suburban Chicago. That's basically.
It's so sad if you're struggling. I mean, I don't want to say it's sad. You're getting work. I take that. I was going to say it's sad if you're a struggling actor and you're doing Nostalgia Critic, but it's not. I rescind that. I'm sorry I said it.
But yeah, so it begins.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I totally fucking agree with you, 100%. But yeah, so the review begins with Corey Taylor, who's essentially playing the role of Pink. Although he doesn't actually play the role of Pink, he basically is a cameo. But anyways, he's supposed to be the Pink stand-in. And he's sitting at the TV, getting ready to watch the Nostalgia Critics review of The Wall. The first song that is played is, the title of the parody song is In the Floyd, but it's parody of In the Flesh, right?
Ah, that's so bad.
And it's basically about how the original film was a box office failure and it sucked. Neither of those things are true. And also it fell into obscurity. That's also not true.
Yeah, this is immediately one of the things that bothered me. So The Wall wasn't this super huge blockbuster, but it was pretty successful. There has never been a point where Pink Floyd The Wall was obscure with film nerds or with classic rock nerds.
No, it had a stage show that had multiple iterations for decades after
Pink Floyd.
Yeah, it's also Pink fucking
obscure.
Floyd. The Wall is not some fucking obscure album. It's one of their most popular albums on top of the fucking movie, on top of the stage show.
And I know part of this is I'm predisposed to feel this way because it was this pivotal album for me. And, but people who aren't big classic rock nerds or whatever, they know and have seen The Wall. People are aware that Pink Floyd made this movie and it's famously kind of weird and it's surreal and it's full of metaphors.
You're right. To be fair, a lot of people talk about it as weird or whatever, right? But if you literally do 5 minutes of research, it's really not that complicated to understand.
That's the most annoying normie bullshit. You see that with The Wall is a great case of it, or a John Waters movie, or Rocky Horror Picture Show. They're actually pretty straightforward, right? They're a little surreal, but they're not I don't know. It's not you're watching a Warhol film or something. You know what I mean? It's not some weird Swedish erotic art film. There's stories. People watch The Wall and they go, you gotta be on drugs to understand it, man. It's just crazy. It's full of all these secret messages. No, it's very straightforward.
Well, yeah, actually, speaking of straightforward, let's get into the first song that really, really undermines Doug's ability to understand anything. So the next one here is the Wall Part 2 cover, which the song title is We Need More Victimization, about how Roger Waters is whiny for having a bad
fucking
child.
Bitch.
It's
such
cool.
A fucking bitch.
When both those things are great for everyone, apparently. That's what I put in my note here. And also, in the song, he's like, oh, all teachers are bad. And it's first off, that was not the criticism of The Wall Part 2. That was not the criticism.
No, here's Doug's whole thing. Roger Waters is an asshole. He has a victim complex. Teenagers love The Wall because they have a victim complex. They want to be oppressed. This movie's saying that all teachers are bad. No, this is about a very specific type of teacher in post-war Britain at private schools.
Yes, where back then you could literally beat children. It was about corporal punishment.
Yeah, it is. That's very explicit in the film and also in the album, because there's, the track that leads into this song is Happiest Days of Our Life, which is about kids getting thrashed by, nasty teachers. At no point is it indicated to me, I guess if you're really dumb, you could say the lyric, "We don't need no education," includes all teachers, but it's like a primal slogan because it embodies how kids feel, But this whole thing that Doug's on is like, oh, the wall is all about wanting to be Christ-like and wanting to be a victim, and Roger Waters is so whiny. And it's like, this is your first example of it, but it keeps coming up. Why is Roger Waters complaining so much? It's like, well, the wall is about how he was traumatized by his never knowing his dad because his father died in World War II, and how the specter of that looms over like his whole life. Now, you can say that he's melodramatic about it. Of course he is, and you can even say it's kind of funny, it's kind of silly. Everyone knows Pink Floyd are kind of silly sometimes, not least of all the wall. But like, that is a valid thing to write about. I don't think it's him being like a narcissist or an asshole.
No, not at all. And then another criticism that I had on here, this is one that a lot of people brought up, but it's like, oh, school was annoying, get over it. He said literally grow a damn pair of balls in the lyrics. And it's like, well, first off,
this is about private schools.
Well, not only that, but Doug, I know about Doug's life and context just as much as I know about Roger Waters. So Doug literally grew up in fucking Naperville, Chicago, right? One of the wealthiest communities in the entire United States. He grew up in the most blessed time in American history and one of the most blessed communities in American history. Talk about how school wasn't that bad. It's like, yes, versus a guy who literally grew up in the ashes of World War II, being a half orphan, essentially, in a school system that valued corporal punishment and fucking like austere blank canvases for people. That's the context. You grew up in a time where you could be yourself, essentially, as much as you could in the 90s.
And Doug also, he says he does.
By the way, you grew up in a time where you could have a fedora in your yearbook photo
and not in your yearbook picture,
and not have two black eyes while taking that picture because you weren't bullied that bad. Okay, like, come on, man.
There's this kind of spoken word bit where Doug's being funny, and he's like, "You remember all the nice teachers you had, like your cool science teacher who listened to your problems? Well, they weren't really nice. That's all I said." It's like, well, that's not what he's talking about. Like, those aren't the types of teachers that Waters is talking about. Every kid listening to this understood that. Lots of people had my experience. They're 12, 13, 15. They see the wall and it really speaks to them. I don't think anyone thinks like this is about all teachers. This is, a specific type of person. And like, I don't know, maybe Waters needed to make that. Maybe he had to have a verse that said, "This is not about every teacher." Would that have made Doug happy?
Everything is within context.
Yeah, but that's how Doug writes. That's how he writes lyrics this whole time. He would have liked that.
Yeah. But yeah, and then we get other criticisms from Doug that comparing World War II to high school is not correct. And it's like, first off, that was not the comparison.
First of all, it's not high school. It's like a private school. That's different. But beyond that.
Yeah, and it's wild. But, and then after that, I put in my note, after that abortion, we get another cover, which is this one. And this one, maybe one of the most inane to me, is the cover of Goodbye Blue Sky. And the song is called Goodbye Weird Song, about how the song is Oscar bait, which I don't understand that criticism at all. Yeah.
It's a folk song.
And then also it's like, some of the lyrics in here are, is World War II or is Monsters is World War II, is that silly? And first off, it's like World War II and monster symbolism is common in war. That doesn't mean anything.
You ever seen a political cartoon?
Yeah, I mean, fucking seriously, like, basically war and conflict and monsters is basically a tale as old as fucking time. So no, it's not fucking silly.
You're going to use monsters to symbolize war because it's a thing everyone can understand on like a primal level.
Exactly. And also being basically an anti-war fucking animated song in a movie. How is that Oscar bait? That doesn't even make sense. Like what the fuck are you talking about? Like, animation has never been particularly popular at the Academy Awards. Like, what the fuck?
I don't know, like, have you ever heard a song that won, like, or like a scene like Goodbye Blue Sky in this film ever won an award like that? Has a song like this ever won an award like that you can think of?
Nope. In fact, the best original song at the Academy Awards is like all Disney stuff. Like, it's all Disney songs and Disney animated movies that are about how like I love nature and shit. It's not about this stuff.
And especially like a surreal animated scene about like World War II and the bombing of Britain, like in the style of this, kind of dark political satirist, Gerald Scarfe. Like the Oscar was going to recognize that. They made that. They were like, oh, the Academy loves this. They love this weird, surreal shit. Like, no.
Basically, all the criticisms in this review are basically nonsense. And I genuinely don't understand how Doug came to some of these conclusions. I just genuinely don't understand it.
He just needed to find criticisms. He had the idea first. The idea, what if we just did a whole total complete parody of The Wall. And he came up with that idea and he was like, that's really ambitious. That's great. That'll be so cool. And then to do it, he just had to find criticism. He had to find enough criticisms to fill that whole running time.
You know, it really reminds me of earlier in his career when he'd find like a bit from a movie, and he's already, you know, having 25-minute reviews, which is already pretty long for a movie review in the first place. That's like, and I shouldn't say it's super long, but you know what I mean? For that content back then, that was pretty long for
back
a review.
then, especially,
And then you do like a 2 or 3 minute bit about some stupid part of the movie that, by the way, was probably made for camp, that was purposefully like ridiculous to like highlight things. They'd be like, this is stupid. This is ridiculous. Then he'd like start doing his dog scream for like 3 minutes straight. And it's like,
so the dog scream is like the worst fucking thing in my life.
By the way, I know you don't have as much of a personal connection with Doug and Channel Awesome as I do, but I'd really recommend looking up the YouTube channel Oni Plays. Oh my god, their Nostalgia Critic and like Channel Awesome like parody stuff is actually genuinely really funny. Like there's you watch some of it?
No, I'll have to. That sounds pretty good.
There's one of them where Linkara, who is like the Zionist like comic book guy, like the worst type of person you could possibly imagine. But there's one where and they do a pretty good impression of him, but he goes to like a Trump rally and then everybody beats the shit out of him. And then Doug in the background is like, build that wall. It's pretty funny.
I'm pretty sure I learned about Nostalgia Critic from Retsupre and Something Awful clowning.
Oh god, when he did the Bart's Nightmare fucking thing.
Like I was straight up, and just like people on Something Awful hated him. Although a lot of them also hated AVGN, who I like, but I get why a lot of those guys didn't like him, you know.
Yeah, no, fucking for sure. All right. And then after, once again, that abortion of a song, let's get into another abortion, which is the Comfortably Numb parody, which he calls Comfortably Dumb. This is also bad. I feel like we're saying that a lot, but all the songs on here are fucking awful. They're so dumb. They're so bad. They're so poorly thought out.
I think we might have skipped over. There's a transitional bit. It might be after this. So correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it's the point after that. There's the transitional part to where the honey ad happens and then the plug for the album happens and then we get to the transitional part.
Okay, because one of Doug's big critiques is like, oh, the songs here are so repetitive and they all run together.
Okay, there is actually a little bit of a transitionary part
where he's like, oh, it's a sad mopey song, and it's another sad mopey song, and another mopey song. And the thing is, like, there are themes in The Wall that were played because it's like a rock opera, but I've never heard someone say that Comfortably Numb and Hey You and Goodbye Blue Sky. I've never heard someone say, even someone that doesn't like Pink Floyd, all these songs sound the same. Like, they all sound like Pink Floyd, but one of his big criticisms is, oh, it's just a bunch of sad mopey songs, and they all sound extremely different.
Well, that's the thing, Brian. If it's not, a blatant, this is my intention, this is why I'm doing this, it's all bland and it's all stupid to Doug. That's the thing. Like, during the Goodbye weird song scene, there's also like all of Doug's animations are terrible. I think I told you that he does basically all the like animations by hand for these reviews.
Yeah, they suck.
And they're awful. And one of them says like my problems and your problems, and it's like, no, Doug, you're literally doing that. You're literally saying that my problems are more important or my critiques are more important than world famous rock star and rock band Pink Floyd.
Well, because if you want to criticize, like, I'm a huge Roger Waters fan, but there's a case to be made that he is self-absorbed, that he's very interested in his own turmoil, that he can be melodramatic. Sure. But
Doug is the last person to say anything about that.
It rings hollow to me for Doug Walker to say, like, I don't know if it's in poor taste to be alluding to World War II and all this. Like, well, I mean, there's a specific reason. Like, it's because of how World War II affected, like, baby boomers of Roger Waters' generation growing up in the UK. Like, it's not for no reason. There's, like, subtext to, like, why the backdrop is thinking about World War II and the stress and the trauma of it, like the shared cultural memory of it.
Yes, exactly. And that actually, I think, leads perfectly into, well, there's a transitional segment where they're supposed to prime Corey to be Pink, but of course they didn't have Corey for probably like a couple days. They probably had him for a day and they shot a bunch of scenes. So Doug is now going to be Pink for the rest of this. And there's a transitional scene. And by the way, the lighting, they open up like a garage door and it's just like blue light. Like everything about this is so half-assed. It's so bad. It's so half-assed.
It's awful. Which would be fine if it was funny or insightful. Like I'm not watching, you know what I mean? But Doug clearly thinks really highly of this. It's very ambitious.
Oh, yes. Well, and that's the thing. Then we get to the ad. We're not going to get into the ad. It's stupid. But I will say the other ad for the actual album is hilarious because, like, hey, do you like the music in this review? And it's like, no, we don't. If you do, buy the album.
Buy The Wall by Pink Floyd. Do you want to listen to The Wall, but with my shitty, unfunny lyrics for some reason?
By the way, an album they sold for money, Brian. They sold that album for money.
I don't understand. Like, okay, I guess there's probably someone out here that thinks that Doug is so funny and charismatic, they want to hear that. But if you like the music, and again, Scallon did an incredible, not well, he did a pretty good job. He didn't do an incredible job. He did a good job. Then just buy the Pink Floyd album. That's it. Literally, there's a whole album of this music, and it's done better on the album. Just buy that.
Yeah, if anybody actually bought Doug's fucking The Wall album, I think they should have all their money seized. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah. I don't think they should be allowed to have money.
They need to become a ward of the state.
Yeah, they need to have a guarantor or whatever. Like what Britney Spears had.
A conservatorship?
A conservatorship, that's the word I was looking for, yeah. Oh god, but that finally leads into, and this isn't, in my opinion, the very worst, but it's maybe the dumbest. We're going to get into in the flesh fascism scene from the movie.
This is the worst. This is the worst to me.
Pretty fucking bad.
If anyone hasn't seen the actual Pink Floyd, the whole in the flesh bit is meant to invoke like Nazi rallies. Pink is up there. He's become like a fascist, like pretty, like, I mean, it's over. He's like leading this fascist movement kind of in his mind. And it's supposed to draw parallels to how close rock stardom can veer into fascist tendencies. And also, you know, how close Thatcherism and Reaganism were veering into like anti-gay and anti-immigrant and anti-black sentiment. Like Doug's whole thing is, first of all, he doesn't think it's about fascism. He thinks it's vague. He says, oh, this is so vague, you could apply anything to it. That's not really true. It's very specifically about right-wing fascism, you know?
No, literally Pink in this scene is dressed up, you're right, like a fascist dictator. He's using slurs to call out people in the audience to like put them up against the wall and murder them. It's very explicit what this is saying.
But Doug thinks it's vague. He's like, it's so vague that you could just project anyone you don't like onto it. I mean, not really.
Well, you know what's the thing is that Doug even says like, well, it's about Thatcher's administration, it's about this, but it's vague. And it's like, no, you literally contradicted that. It's not vague at all. Like, that's the thing, like, it's like, oh yeah, this is about a very specific, like, social cultural phenomena in a time and frame, but it's vague. And it's like, you can't have both of those things in the same sentence. Yeah. You can't. That doesn't make any sense.
Because Doug is so concerned about how Roger Waters is invoking fascism in World War II tastelessly that he's found something really tasteful to do with this, right? He's not going to make it about fascism. He'll probably make it about something really current and modern that's really important. It'll probably be relevant to the movie too, right? Or will he just stop talking about the movie and spend the whole of this song complaining? And this is about change the channel. It becomes this whole thing that's like, so in The Wall, the original, Pink is ranking out minorities, queer people, and non-white people and women, and that's the, you know, it's fascism. Pink is a bad guy in this scene. Doug now is going like, oh, you want to be oppressed, and you want to be oppressed, and you want to be outraged, and you want to complain and get attention, and on social media you can all complain and make me your enemy even though you don't even know me. Like, that's literally the type of shit he's saying. That has nothing to do with the movie, has nothing to do with the song, has nothing to do with the scene. He's just talking about his critics. He's just talking about people that said he ran a shitty business.
Which, that's the thing, and like I said, obviously we're not going to entertain my joke idea earlier, but like this is like very illustrative of Doug himself. Like, it's kind of wild to me. If Doug was smarter, I could actually make an argument that this might be a meta commentary, but it's not.
But it is not. No. The only commentary that Doug can do is the most literal, ham-fisted commentary imaginable, or else he thinks it's vague. You know, when you said, why did Doug make this? And I theorized that he made it because he thought it'd be ambitious. He made it so he could do this. This is a kind of sneaky way for him to talk about change the channel. He built this whole review around this.
Brian, you're right, because he's actually an employee of Channel Awesome. People don't know that. He sold the rights to that guy with the glasses at Channel Awesome like 15 years ago. And basically, he's never been allowed to actually make a public statement about like fucking change the channel. So yeah, you're right. This is his opportunity to do it. You're dead serious.
Talking about The Wall, making a musical, doing an ambition, that was all secondary. He realized that if he invoked this scene and made it about people who are mean on their phones, God, I wish I could remember the specific lyrics because they're so fucking... So instead of the weird fascist right-wing rant that Pink goes on, Doug literally has a rant where he's like, you can project anything you want onto me and hate me and make me inhuman.
Yeah, put your face here, like basically use me as the punching bag. Yeah.
I'm bad and you're good. You're perfect. You're so much better than I am. It's so fucking obvious, so fucking whiny.
And then also, I do want to highlight a YouTube comment from Spin Shocker here that I linked to you earlier, and you and I totally agree with it. Yeah. And it says, you know, one of the most ironic parts of Doug's criticism is that he makes such a big deal about how tone deaf it is to compare World War II to high school, only to then clumsily compare fascism to Twitter discourse and SJWs.
Yeah, this song is about SJWs. This song is about wokeness gone amok.
But that's the thing, O'Brien, is that comparing World War II to high school, which isn't even the comparison, by the way, but that's cringe and that's ridiculous. But what he did is totally fucking fine. Comparing, yeah, literally like the most bare naked fascism portrayal in a movie you possibly could to Twitter discourse. Which, by the way, that's what all the right-wing comedians say. They're like, fucking SJWs are the new Nazis.
And Doug must know that. He's online enough. He's a big lib. He must know that that's how he looks in this scene.
No, that's the crazy thing. Like, Doug, at one point, he made a response, not necessarily a response, but somebody asked him about the Oni Place thing, about like him being at the Trump rally yelling, build the wall. He's like, well, I would never be at a Trump rally, first off.
Yeah.
And it's like, then why are you parroting the same talking points that like fucking far-right Trump people parody?
If I didn't, watching this in the flesh parody, if I didn't know enough about Doug, and of course, just by looking at him, you know he's like a Democrat. But if I didn't know that about him, I would be like, oh, this is like an all-right, not even an all-right guy, because those guys are funnier than this, unfortunately.
No, you're 100% correct. Absolutely. Like, say what you want, but Sam Hyde is way funnier than this.
I mean, look, I have a tendency to talk about how talented really bad people are. And someday it's going to come back and bite me in the ass. He's pretty funny. If someone said he's never been funny, they'd be lying.
I saw a video recently, and to be fair, this is an old one, where he goes to like people in Williamsburg and asks them like random questions. And he asks like a woman, like, do you have less than 10 sex partners or way more? And the girl says no comment. And then later on, she literally became like a Japanese like adult video star for years. That one made me laugh. Did she get the gig because of Sam Hyde? Did getting seen in that video get her noticed by the industry? Think so, no. I think it was just like, one of those things where somebody appears in the video and then 10 years later they become like a celebrity or something. I think it was like just one of those things.
Well, good for both of them.
Yeah. Oh, God. And then there's a lot more that happens, just nonsense. But then eventually we get to, and you said that the fucking In the Flesh one was the worst, but in my opinion, this one is the worst just because it's, I don't know, there's a lot of psychosexual pathology with this one. We get to the trial segment where a horny furry monster complains about the wall animation is not relatable enough.
Oh my God. So when I was a kid, the trial specifically for about a year when I was first like, I loved Pink Floyd and then I got into classic rock for probably about a year, maybe even 2 years. The trial was my favorite song. And if my friends didn't want to watch this whole movie, I would just show them this scene. Now, obviously the trial's kind of silly. It's very fucking dramatic, over the top theatrical. So like there are things to make fun of about it. But the primary criticism of this is we don't get to know the surreal animated monsters enough. They aren't humanized enough. We don't get to spend enough time with them. They're metaphors. They aren't actual creatures. But also, Doug argues, right? He argues anyone can create a weird looking monster. Here's a bunch of them that we made up. But all of the monsters that Doug created in this look like shit. The monsters that Gerald Scarve created for the wall they're iconic. So many fucking people know what the warplane bird from Goodbye Blue Sky looks like. So many people know about the singing ass. Like they're legendary in like animation and creature designs. They really are. And he's saying anyone can design these creatures. And then he shows us a bunch of stupid, horny, furry bullshit he made. And he's like, see, this is just the same.
Yeah, very, very poorly animated CGI horny. It
makes a lot of sense when you said that he animates this himself. I was like, oh, that's why he's like, anyone can do what Gerald Scarfe does. Like, no.
Oh, no, Brian. By the way, no, he got a guy specifically to do this.
Oh, okay. Because when you said that, I was like, well, that kind of fits. That's even worse, though. He paid someone for this.
Oh, no, I meant like with the stuff during Goodbye Weird Song, Goodbye Blue Sky, that animation he does by himself. In fact, I think I told you at one point, his first ever thing that he actually became quote unquote kind of famous for was he designed like the arcade like art for like a fairly popular arcade game back in the day. You did
tell me that.
But that same art on it is the exact, like the same quality 20 years later. It's hilarious. It's like,
I don't understand this criticism, and he keeps going back to it. Oh, wouldn't you like to spend more time with these creatures and get to know more? It's like, well, no, these creatures only exist in Pink's mind as a manifestation of his own trauma. What does he mean? You want to spend more time with the warplane bird in Goodbye Blue Sky? And maybe it'll be more interesting. It's a visual representation of war.
Yeah, do you want to hang out with the blank-faced children? Like,
yeah, I don't understand what he thinks we're missing by not getting... If the argument was the animation's the best part of the wall, I wish there was more of it, I would not necessarily agree, but I'd get it. The argument is that we don't have an emotional connection. Like, the trial is all monsters. It's every important character in Pink's life. His mother, his wife, his school teacher, everyone that has led to his trauma, manifested as a weird, scary creature. And he's saying, like, well, what if we got to spend more time with the scorpion Freudian manifestation of Pink's wife, but also it's just bad. The criticisms of The Wall, and they all come together here. He's criticizing Roger Waters for being pretentious. This is so pretentious. He keeps saying like, oh, there's so much in The Wall that like it has potential to be good, but it never really reaches it. And it's like, what is your criticism of this? That it's not horny enough?
Yeah, and actually, the one note I have here is, how are you really going to make CGI sexy monsters criticizing The Wall and think you're anything other than a hack? Like, genuinely.
Yeah, exactly. You would think watching this, because, okay, there's older NC stuff. I went through a phase for a few years when I'd be like, this isn't my taste. It's not that funny to me, but he's fine. But you would think for someone who's been doing this as long as he has, this is his career, that he would watch this and think, this is kind of embarrassing.
But that's if Doug had any self-awareness, and he doesn't. He has essentially no he is essentially an NPC. He has no self-awareness.
Yeah. I mean, his favorite director is Tim Burton.
Damn. Well, to be fair, that's also like elderly millennial fucking cringe shit on top of
exactly that. Although, to be honest, I have heard his criticisms of Burton, and they're pretty thoughtful. He talks about how he used to be really distinct. What everyone says about Tim Burton, he used to have a good style, and now he's self-parody or whatever. But that is his favorite director. So if you want to talk about a cringe elderly millennial, that's Doug Walker.
And then after that, the review is over. He finally gets to talk to Corey. And Corey's like, I didn't even get a fucking song. And he's like, well, what do you think about The Wall? That's the whole point of the review. And he's like, I thought it was fine. Art was good, but it was a little overbearing. He's like, sure. And it's like, so you spent 35 minutes calling this like the biggest piece of shit and most pretentious thing in the world. And that's your final takeaway. Like, that's also another like elderly millennial thing. Like going this much effort and then in the end, like, it's fine. That's like just like a fucking snark thing.
Yeah. Snark for snark's own sake, because it makes you feel superior. The other thing is that if someone just said The Wall, it's okay, it's a little overbearing, it's kind of over the top, it's too theatrical, it's too dramatic, it's too self-serious, I'd be like, okay. But Doug level is what I think are some pretty heavy criticisms. The thing where he's saying that it's trivializing the Holocaust and World War II, I think is... Also, I want to point out, I don't think he ever mentions the misogyny in The Wall, which for my money is probably the biggest thing worth criticizing in it. I don't even think he mentions it.
I think he mentions the thing about like, oh, you're going to make a song about your wife cheating on you. Like, that's really cringy. I think that's the closest he comes to that.
That's a little different than what you are. You know what? Right?
Oh, no, I'm just saying that's the closest it comes to
the closest he gets. Yeah. Like the criticisms he makes are basically that it's also like he has kind of this thesis statement that when you see The Wall as a kid, it means a lot to you. But then you grow up and as you watch it as an adult, you're like, this kind of sucks. Which, by the way, I'm not sure if that's the universal experience of people that see The Wall when they're kids. I mean, a non-zero amount of them, sure. But I'm sure that there's more than a few people like me who just like, and maybe you outgrow it, you go through phases where like, oh, this is a good movie. This meant a lot to me. Like the thesis of his whole review is that when you watch The Wall as an adult, you think it's stupid. So him saying, yeah, it's okay, kind of undermines that.
Well, what's interesting, actually, is I had the basically exact opposite experience. So I remember watching the actual Wall movie probably 10, 11, 12 years ago, I want to say. And I remember I liked it, but I didn't really understand it because I didn't really know that much about Pink Floyd at the time. Sure. But the more I learned about Pink Floyd and actually seeing the responses of people who criticized this review actually made me appreciate The Wall a lot more and understand a lot of it. Because I didn't really know a whole lot about, Roger Waters' personal life. I didn't know about his dad dying. I mean, it's obviously shown in the movie, but unless you do research, you didn't know that his dad died immediately after he was conceived, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The scene in The Wall where Pink as a child finds his dad's uniform and stuff and wears it, his mom walks in on him and tells him that's like a real thing. That was the first time he ever saw anything that belonged to his father. He dressed up in his dad's uniform and his mom saw it and was really upset and yelled at him.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I now understand a lot more and I've actually learned to appreciate it a lot more. So Doug, I think you're entirely incorrect, at least from this motherfucker's perspective.
I mean, I also just think it's the most egregious things to me there are some criticisms of the music and the songwriting. When he says like Goodbye Blue Sky is an Oscar bait song, which again doesn't make any sense. Or when he says all the songs are sad and mopey, it's like, well, if the music's so boring, then why did you make a whole album re-recording all the songs?
Exactly. And I don't think anybody, well, I shouldn't say anybody, but I don't think that's the biggest criticism of The Wall, the album.
No,
that it's boring. Like, maybe some people say it's a little too long, but I don't think anybody says it's boring. People
definitely do say it's too long. And of course, there's like a certain type of person that's into like college rock or punk that just hates Pink Floyd. Sure, whatever. But like, I would say the criticism of it is that it's self-serious, which Doug does say. But I almost feel like he doesn't really understand. Well, I don't know. he's like saying it for a different reason, I feel, because the criticism I always heard, and I think there's some merit to, is that Waters is so interested in his own story that sometimes it comes off a bit unself-aware, which I think is fair, even though I like Waters a lot and I like the album very well. But Doug's thing is like saying that while doing the exact same thing. That fucking Twitter bullshit is insane. It's insane that he did that while saying that Waters is too self-obsessed or whatever.
I genuinely do think your claim, though, about why he did this review makes a lot of sense. I genuinely do believe that.
I'm sure, the more I think about it, I'm sure of it. And he worked backwards from there.
But also, I do want to mention one last point here. The review ends with the final joke being that because Corey didn't get a song, he then gets to play the SpongeBob SquarePants theme, and that's the end of the review. That's the best part of the review, because it's over, and it's mercifully short.
It's over. So, wait, I have a real question. Did Corey actually sing that?
Yes, he did.
Like on SpongeBob? Like on
no, not on SpongeBob.
Okay,
I think the
was
whole
confused.
joke is that he's like, I'm going to play my most famous song.
And you think he's going to play a Slipknot song?
Maybe even a Stone Sour song or something, but no, he just plays
that'd
the
be
fucking
funny
SpongeBob.
He did Bother.
Yeah. I'm looking through the glass.
One of the shittiest songs he's ever done.
Yeah. But yeah, so that is the wall review here. So before we get to our pluggables, we got to get to our final thoughts. And I know we've had plenty of thoughts here, but my final thought here is I'm going to say this. Just watch the movie, listen to the album, don't pay attention to this. And also actually watch the responses to this if you don't understand the wall album or movie, because they're actually very illuminating. But don't watch this. Just don't watch this.
Yeah, Pink Floyd fans love to talk about Pink Floyd. So if you have any questions about Pink Floyd, just ask someone and they will answer. Yeah, this is bad. This is bad media analysis. I think it's disingenuous. Like I said, I think he's basically had the idea and then made up reasons to criticize them so he could do it. And also, the fucking cancel culture bullshit in the Flesh parody is, I don't want to say it's offensive. I think that's a little dramatic, but it is very stupid, especially when he spends a non-zero amount of the review saying that Roger Waters is making tasteless comparisons. He's literally complaining about people being mean to him on Twitter. It sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. I agree, Doug sucks. I think this is genuinely the worst thing he's ever done. I think even worse than To Boldly Flee. I think worse than Melvin Brother the Joker by quite a bit. I think this is easily the worst thing Doug has ever done. And that's including, by the way, the ignoring the sexual harassment of all of his employees.
Yeah. Well, so the reason that this is worse than the Melvin thing or any of his content, the reason for my money is this has like a point to it, a stupid point that's bad, but Doug believed in it. He felt like he was saying something. He was speaking truth to power. So it's not just unfunny. It's not just annoying or too long or bad criticisms. It's all wrapped up in Doug talking about himself, how much smarter he is than everyone else. And that's the moral that we're supposed to take away, basically.
Yeah, god damn it. I'll be honest, also another final thought. I think this is the worst thing we've talked about so far on the show. I think worse than fucking Tom Myers. I think worse than any Kurt Wimmer movie. This is just awful.
This was probably the most annoying thing that I've ever had to watch for the show.
And I wanted to choose it because it's obviously going to be a double feature for what we're going to view next time.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, when I started watching this, I was like 2 minutes in and I'm like, oh my God, why did I choose this? Which I never do, by the way. I've never done that. Before I choose something, I'm like, I'm going to enjoy this even if it's bad. But this, I'm just like, why did I choose this? This is so awful.
So because I'd heard so much about how bad this was, I half expected it to not be as bad as I had heard. Because what could possibly be that bad, you know? But it is. And Doug is unbothered. He will continue to have a career. I guarantee it. It's fine. He's fine. He's floating right along. He is one of the most influential content creators on the internet. Still,
for fucking better or worse.
Yeah, no putting the genie back in the bottle.
God, Jesus Christ. All right, well, speaking of putting genies back in the bottle, let's get into our pluggables here. So you can follow me at Carlos Chantor on Twitter.com. And as well, please follow us on both our Spotify and our YouTube channel where we upload every episode simultaneously. And as well, please donate to the Lucifer and the Father campaign. Our good friends Scott, Sean, Robert are working on a fantastic sequel to their fantastic series, Lucifer and the Father. They have the first episode out on YouTube if you want to check it out. We've talked about it a million times, but if you want to check it out, of course, you can watch it. But they need a little bit more money, a little bit more support to continue on the series, so please donate to the campaign. And as well, as always, I know we've said this quite a few episodes now, but if you donate to the campaign and you just, put a YouTube comment, send us an email telling us that you donated to Lucifer and the Father because of us, we will, within reason, match that donation. Now, I will say I did just see tonight that somebody donated $500. We will not match that donation. But if you want to do like 20, 25 bucks, we'll do that. We'll do that.
Yeah, I just don't have it, man.
Yeah.
We're not making that much money off the show.
You can't just put that on your fucking American Express black card, Brian.
And as
Jesus.
well, follow us on Instagram at Millennials Are Old Pod and Millennials Are Old Facebook page there. Send me any cringe millennial shit you find. There's a lot of it out there, and I know millennials do awful fucking eye gouging shit all the time online, but there's too much of it. So if you see something, it doesn't have to be millennials, it could be any generation, but if you got bad millennials, we love to see them. We love to see ourselves. We love to think about ourselves. We love to abuse ourselves. So please get in touch. Help keep me abreast of whatever embarrassing things are happening to people online, because I'm getting older and it's getting more difficult for me to be very online.
Yes. And you know what? If you can find us, more cringe millennial content, stuff like Doug, we love torturing ourselves with bad content. We literally tortured ourselves with the worst thing tonight. So.
This was bad. I was like, and I got over it about 10 minutes in, but that first 10 minutes of watching this, I was like, the fuck is wrong with Taylor? Do you think we should do this?
I thought that of myself too. I'm like, why did I choose this? I genuinely thought that. But also, to be fair, I did not want to recommend Kick-Assia because it's twice as long.
No, of course. Well, and the other thing is that as a piece, this double feature, it's going to go so well together.
Yes. Both these things are heavily criticized, although this is less criticized than the other thing we're going to review.
I have not seen the next selection, but I expect I will like it more than this.
100%. We are going to like this infinitely more. Even if it's not good, it is still going to be a lot better. Even if it's mediocre, I will take mediocre.
Yeah. It's not going to be like hateful coming from this little snark worm.
But yes, so that is our review here. And you know what, Brian? Speaking of Nostalgia Critic, I am becoming nostalgic for my bed. I have not fallen asleep in my bed in probably about 14, 16 hours at this point. So I think you and I should head off to bed.
This is Millennials Are Old. We something, so you don't,
Yeah, we go to sleep so you don't have to. You're all caffeine addicts. I don't know. Cocaine addicts.
Yeah. What drugs do Zoomers do? What's the popular drug for them?
Poppers. I think they do poppers.
Oh, yeah. Which just makes sense. We sleep so that you can do poppers.
Yeah, what are they doing at this? Are they doing black tar heroin, or is that more of a Gen X thing?
That's more a Gen X thing. I think even like Fenny, I think is more like a millennial thing.
Yeah, God. Oh, you know what? Those charged lemonades. That's what Zoomers are doing for drugs. Those fucking Panera charged lemonades that they're killing themselves with.
Oh, yeah. And they all do. They all vape. Oh,
vaping too. Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, but yeah. So Zoomer cringe, please continue to be addicted to substances. And we're going to be addicted to sleeping because we're old as shit. So have a good night, everybody.